Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Job with Ellen and Sarah. We've got a quick little stand up for everybody, and then we're going to jump into an interview with Brie. But first, hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Hi, Ellen. It's going great. How are you?
Fabulous. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. We get to see each other this week.
Oh my God. We get to have so much friend time coming up. I'm so happy about that. It has been far too long that when you guys came to San Diego, I think it was like over a year that we hadn't seen each other in person, which is so sad.
I know. We vowed to never let that happen again. But yes, we get to see each other.
100%.
And we will fill everybody in on why we're seeing each other in the next week's episode. So stay tuned.
Drum
And I
roll.
think we might be
Yes.
recording in person. So be prepared because there's probably going to be a lot of giggles.
Yeah. Oh God. And maybe some tech errors of figuring out how the heck we're going to do that. But that's a problem for another day. Sarah, give us your stand up. I see some notes here in our shared app. What are our shared
yes,
note?
I have two. So you'll hear a lot in our episode today about portfolio careers, but I had something come up this week where I was like, this is a first. I need to talk about it because this is growth. Okay. So I do not like to say no, especially if it's to an opportunity that I have once wanted for so long. But this week I had an opportunity presented to me and I would love to say yes. I do not have the physical, mental, emotional capacity, unfortunately, to say yes. And oftentimes saying no is way more difficult than saying yes, right? And especially when it's that like immediate no where it's like, this just won't work out. But I think the positive spin on that is anytime you have to say no, it's going to be a yes for somebody else. And you would rather that yes be from somebody that you know. And so I was able to reach out to another colleague and be able to present it to them. And I'm hoping that it'll be able to work out. So if not me, somebody in my circle. So it was just one of those like growth moments because I think a year ago I would have said yes. And then immediately I would have been like, I can't do this.
I'm stressed.
I'm stressed. Why am I crying all the time? Because you did this to yourself. You did this to yourself, Sarah. Okay. And then the second is
hang on. Quick pause.
Oh,
good job saying no. I'm very proud of you. And
Thank you.
that's a very positive and healthy outlook to have to pass the yes on to someone else. That is growth, baby.
She's learning. Okay. The second is an article that my mom sent to me, and it was from the framework of a CEO. And I still need to read the thing thoroughly, but my mom and I talked about it, and she said that the biggest call out to her was that the CEO, anytime she's in a conversation with anyone that's on her team at any stage of the company, she asks, if you were the CEO, what would you do? Instead of, what can I do differently? And I loved that like change in framework because I'm not currently managing somebody, but I think that at any level managing people is really difficult. And instead of saying like, oh, what can I do differently and like making it about you, if you kind of pass the baton and say, oh, Ellen, if you were the manager, what's some things that you would like shake up or whatever, and it just puts them in their own shoes as the manager. And I don't know, I just thought that was really fascinating as a leader asking, and also too a CEO asking that of their employees, because sometimes you don't want to face the noise, right? But anyways, those were my two items. Ellen, I see you have a few items in the stand-up. What do you have to talk about?
Items. Well, and two, with the CEO question, I think that's a very mature and selfless way to lead instead of saying me, I, what can I do? I love that, like you said, that like lens change of having someone put themselves in the shoes of a broader context instead of that one specific person. So it's an interesting way to look at it. I like that perspective. Thank you. I have an interesting question for you. What is your opinion on when you join a new company, what the LinkedIn quote etiquette is? Are you reaching out and connecting with people, or do you want people to reach out and connect to you? Or am I thinking about this too much?
Oh, okay. I was giggling because I was like, please don't do the I'm so excited to join this company. Thank you to the at hiring manager, at hiring manager,
Yeah.
at hiring for trusting my vision. Okay, sorry. There's so many memes about that, and I just think it's hilarious. It's like the game that you have to play.
Yeah.
I think people, especially if you're working remote, they're going to see your name pop up in Slack, on Teams, on blah 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 blah. I say you extend the invite, and maybe it's an opportunity for you to strike up a conversation with them, because I love somebody that puts themselves out there.
Mhm.
Does
I
that
think
answer your
it's
question?
no, it does. Well, and I'm kind of like taking a little analysis into my current situation. Let's just say no one has requested to be my friend on LinkedIn, which is totally fine. But I'm kind of like food for thought. Pulse check
Yeah.
is more or less kind of what I wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, I don't have
Um,
anything to hide. So if I think it's kind of like courting. Like,
it is. It's like this weird, awkward dance of
yeah.
like, who's gonna do it first?
I know you
I
saw me.
definitely could, but I'm stubborn, so that's that's
You're
my
not
thoughts on the
you're
matter.
not a Taurus.
Oh
No.
God. Um, okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is I took a screenshot and dropped it in here.
Yeah.
But it's a graphic, and then who is this woman, that founder and CEO of the Female Quotient, which go check that account out if you have some time. But the picture itself is a graphic that says in the Fortune 500, female CEOs average 4.5 years in their jobs compared to male CEOs 7.2 years. And I thought that was interesting. And
Hmm.
she goes on to talk about there was a specific instance of this woman named Karen Lynch. She was the CEO of CVS Health, and where she was not necessarily replaced, but it's uh, replaced by men. And I thought it was a really interesting article because we kind of talked about this previously. Is it the glass cliff where women are brought into leadership in times of like extreme business peril to in oftentimes like an
Boo boo.
absolutely chaotic situation to where
Mhm.
there's no way out so that they can have a name and a face to point the finger to. And I found it really interesting because it talks about some areas or that glass cliff aspect that we have previously kind of had conversations around. But I found that interesting. Only 4.5 years compared to 7.2. That's a
Yeah,
significant difference of time.
right.
It's not
And my
like it's
initial thought
a
is like,
couple months.
right, almost double. At whose choice, right? Was it That's the
Yeah.
kind of like follow-up question I have, is who made the decision that the 4.5 years was cut at 4.5 years? Is that a company decision, like in the case of CBS Health, or is
Mhm.
it the CEO's decision that's just like, this is a fight that I don't want to fight? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it just kind of sparked some intrigue. So I dropped some gorgeous screenshots into our note because I wanted your thoughts, opinions,
Yeah.
questions on the matter.
I mean, we've definitely talked about it before when you get to that level of CEOs. Also, too, another follow-up question. In the Fortune 500, what percentage are female CEOs versus male CEOs?
I bet you it's under 10.
I would assume. Yeah.
Ooh, that's an interesting stat. All right, we'll look that up and get back to you guys.
Yes.
We'll figure it out. Sarah, thank you so much for your stand up. Your girls are going
Thank
to
you.
be booked and busy in New York this weekend. That's right. We're going to be city girls. We're going to wear cute outfits, romp around, network, go to some fun restaurants, shopping, all of the fun things. Please enjoy Brie's episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We haven't done a social spiel in a minute. Before I jump into social spiel, say that 3 times fast. Any parting thoughts, Sarah?
You stole my question. No,
Sorry.
everybody, reminder, as you're heading into potentially Q4 is usually the panic quarter. Oh my God, we got to hit our numbers. Take a deep breath. Take 3 deep breaths if you need it. And remind yourself it is actually just a job.
Amen. Mic drop. It's just a job. Go follow us on socials. Enjoy Bree's episode. Hi, everybody. We're going to jump into an interview with Brie Abramowicz. Sure, I'm laughing because I'm looking at her bio, and next to her name is a little emoji of cheese. So if you need any reason to smile today, know that Brie with her little cheese emoji. I love that. Brie has two professional loves: creating products that customers fall head over heels for and empowering ambitious, growth oriented leaders to unleash their unique talents at work. She's a generalist at heart with over a decade of startup experience creating category disruptive products and leading engaged, purpose driven product and marketing teams. Brie was one of those lovely people who reached out to us on LinkedIn. Hey, Brie, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. So happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. How is we'll release this on Monday, so we'll pretend. How is your Monday going so far?
It's going great. Yeah, easing into the week. Have a little bit of a chill air here in Portland. Nice fall day.
I'm very jealous. It is
Beautiful.
80 degrees down here in San Diego, even though I'm in a sweater. So, how's that for a little bit backwards? But, Brie, we're so excited to have you. We're going to take it all the way back to younger Brie. What did
Mhm.
you want to be when you were growing up?
Wow, I love this question. I wanted to be a journalist, like particularly an investigative journalist, because I was enamored with other people's stories and the idea of storytelling and bringing truth to light. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to be as a little kid.
Ooh, did you write any stories that you can recall as a child?
I actually did a lot of creative writing workshops and things like that when I was younger, and then went to summer camps for it and all of that. And I actually am in the pursuit of like reinvigorating that passion and am taking some writing classes again now. I don't know why I let that go for so long, but yeah, I definitely did write, and I forced my family at Christmas to like play out these elaborate plays and things like that that I would take it
Cute.
upon myself to write. So yeah,
Oh my gosh.
very precocious kid.
I love that you made it a family effort. You're like, I'm spending the time and energy on this, and everybody will participate. Brie, I have to say, anytime I come across somebody that enjoys writing as
Hmm.
an outlet, as a hobby, as a creative medium,
Hmm.
kudos to you, because clearly, I don't know about you, Ellen, but my medium of choice is talking. When it comes down to typing,
Uh-huh.
words escape me. So I think that it is amazing that you're leaning into it. Plus, also too, as an adult, like leaning into old hobbies that you had as a
Uh-huh.
child that brought you joy, I think is so amazing. Okay, so creative writing maybe wasn't what you stuck with it or stuck
Hmm.
with, but your journey into undergrad school, what was that experience like? Where did you go to school? What did you
Hmm.
study? Those first initial years, what was your experience like?
Yeah, so I went to University of Delaware, so I'm originally from the East Coast.
Brie, you're
Yeah.
kidding.
Did you
Oh
go
my
there?
gosh. I didn't know this. We're figuring this out in real time. I live in Wilmington. My husband
Oh
works
my
at the
God, that's so
University of
funny.
Delaware.
Small world. Blue
Go
hen.
Blue Hens.
That's so funny.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, so I
Amazing.
went there, and I was a major in finance, or as they say, finance when you're majoring in that,
Love
and
that.
also a minor in Spanish. So, yeah, I wanted to be able to travel during undergrad, and so I spent a ton of time when I wasn't completing my requirements for that degree in other countries, including like Mexico, Peru, and Spain.
Fun. I love
Yeah,
finance. That's hysterical.
it's so silly.
Just a little sprinkle of something extra.
Just
So
spice
you
it
got to
up.
travel. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Was that something that you elected for? Like, how did you come about that decision to travel the world while also studying?
Yeah. Well, I was really impacted by an experience I had in high school. So, my parents were very supportive. I sang a lot in high school as well. And there was this opportunity to travel for a month when I was a junior in high school through Western Europe. And that totally opened up like an opportunity for me to like see the world with a group of other people. And I was bitten by the travel bug ever since that trip. So when I went to college, I wanted a major that would allow me to have the opportunity to travel and see different parts of the world. And I was obsessed with Spanish from Spain. And so I gravitated for the majority of my travel to Spain, but also wanted to learn about different Spanish speaking countries.
Whoa.
Cool.
Okay, I love this because I don't have regrets, but if there was a regret that I
Oh
have, it's
no.
not taking advantage of doing a semester abroad. I did a few weeks abroad, but it was
Same.
like just enough of a taste. I think that there's
Mm-hmm.
so much, I don't know. I didn't grow up traveling, so that was definitely something that was not comfortable, but
Uh-huh.
I can't even imagine the experience of being 18, 19, 20, traveling while still studying. It makes sense that the travel bug definitely bit you and stuck around. Can you think about, especially being, younger and in college, already learning so much because it's
Mm-hmm.
a whole life experience, but taking that life experience into a different country, like what were some of the big, more like life lessons that you learned while studying abroad?
Yeah. The biggest one when I traveled to Spain and was there for a semester was how different people, especially being from the East Coast, approached work life integration before that phrase was a thing. So I was in business school. I was very type A at the time. I'm a little bit more chill, still type A, but like a little bit calmer now. And so, like, going to a country where you break in the middle of the day and you go back and you take a siesta at 2 o'clock and you break bread with the family that is hosting you. And we watched The Simpsons together. And then everybody went back to their respective areas, whether it was work or, in my case, school. Um, that had such an impression on me of how you could live. And
Mhm.
I'm sure I would have realized that lesson at some point in life, but to have that experience at, I think I was 19 at the time, 20, I think accelerated me learning that while I was forming my own personhood. And I think that experience also influenced my decision to move to Portland because that lifestyle is, it's not, I mean, it's not same as Spain, but in terms of people having good balance between the two arenas of life, it helped me try to pick the areas of the country that express that more naturally than the East Coast does. So yeah, it definitely had a huge impact on me. I appreciate the question.
If you have a
We talk
list,
about this a lot.
yeah, I was just gonna say, if you have a list, Brie, of places that you explored outside of Portland that you think resemble Europe, please send it my way.
Go to Nolans. That's the jam, or my jam, if you've ever been
Really?
there.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
have to add it. I have a note in my phone of places that I want to explore, but appreciate that. I am so fascinated by that.
Really quick on the whole like work life balance and the
Hmm.
difference between most other countries versus America. Sarah
Hmm.
and I talk about this a lot too. And I think it's so interesting, like you said, having that experience so young.
Hmm.
Because I think I experienced it later in life, noticing the difference between the two, especially with working with teams that are across the globe.
Hmm.
And I find myself being so jealous and
Hmm.
envious of the lifestyle of the companies that support that kind of lifestyle
Right.
because companies in America, yeah, work life balance, sure. When it comes down to it, it is not a thing, and your boss is pinging you at 7 p.m. and on the weekends because you need a report on Monday
Hmm.
morning. I mean, it. I just don't think it exists here. So
Mhm.
it's. I appreciate and I find your perspective really interesting, especially having experienced that so young. So bringing it back to you
Uh-huh.
and continuing your journey, when did graduation come around? When did you start to form your idea of where you wanted to take your career post college?
I'm laughing because I had no idea.
Well, that's great.
We
Most people
appreciate the
don't, so I like that.
honesty. Yeah.
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 So a lot of people with a major in finance immediately went to work in like a public accounting firm.
Mhm.
I totally didn't want to do that, but I also had no idea what alternative I wanted to do. So naturally, I avoided working a full-time role, and I did a Peace Corps type of role
Cool.
with a shorter duration in Oaxaca, Mexico, where I helped a not for profit that was based there forward its mission. And it was just like an amazing capstone, I think, to school, because I hadn't quite like integrated everything from that really important experience as a young adult. And I wanted time and space to think about what I wanted next. And so I traveled, and then very fortunate for me, I came back and then I messaged the manager I had the summer prior to graduating and said, "Help, I need work." And so conveniently again, there was an opportunity for that wasn't public accounting. Again, was avoiding that at all costs because I wasn't interested in that, to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, and take a different type of finance role and work in banking. And so I packed up my Mini Cooper that I had at the time and moved to North Carolina, where I didn't know anybody, and started a new life. A couple of months after other people that graduated in June, I started in my first full-time role in January of the following year.
Brie, I admire you for taking the opportunity to essentially move forward with an alternative route as opposed to taking the full-time job immediately out of school, because there's so many barriers to that and so many people telling you that you shouldn't do it. But I've always said, if I was a hiring manager and had two resumes in front of me, I would much rather take the person that's had this life of experience as opposed to somebody who's been consistent in one role for forever. Making the transition though, how was that? Especially knowing that you were moving.
Yeah.
I mean, you said you packed up your Mini Cooper and off you went. What was the first couple of weeks like?
Um, it was a transition, I would say, because there were, I forget the exact number, but it was more than a handful, maybe like 15 of us starting at the same time. And people had graduated a semester later, but they were coming right from school, and they were very um, driven by the incentives that the program was oriented around. And I had spent a summer like in a tiny little town where like half of the town was living in the United States, completely separated from their families, sending money back in some cases. Like people were estranged from their family members and that sort of thing. And so to like go back into the real world after having this like incredibly like eye-opening experience impressed upon me before like making money in that way, it was like a little jarring, I would say, to go from like one extreme to the other. And it took me a minute to kind of like settle into it, um, which I think is totally natural. So kudos to young Brie for like giving it time to ease into it, given the
Totally.
transition.
That that is so important to recognize that you're giving yourself credit for taking things slow, because again, that initial jump into your first job is really not talked about in modern day culture, especially the hustle culture that we've built in the US. Knowing that it was your first job,
Mm-hmm.
were you able to stick it out, or what was the experience like, especially given that big transition it was?
Yeah. So that first company I worked for, I was at Bank of America. I was there for 8 years. It's the longest I've been at one company since I've not been at a place that long in since that time. So like hearing that now, and I'm like, not that I'm like trying to jump, but it's just like such a long time to stay in one
Mm-hmm.
place.
Mm-hmm.
But I had many roles and opportunities, so I did stick it out. It was just like a little bumpy to start, if you will.
You and Sarah have a lot in common now, don't you?
Brie, yes. I also worked at Bank of America. Wow. Okay, we need to definitely have a coffee chat to digest all of this.
Yeah, as
Um,
Delawareans do, apparently.
oh my goodness. Yes, we can go get it over a cup of brouhaha. So bet you haven't heard that name in a while.
I
Um,
have it.
so I mean, 8 years, like that's a really long time, especially nowadays. I feel like it's pretty much in that kind of 2 to 5 year range. Sounds like you had a
Mhm.
really amazing opportunity to, jump around, maybe take on some different roles. Of the roles that you held, what had the most impact on you? And were you able to serve as a manager? Did you have anybody under you?
Mhm.
Tell us everything.
Sure. I didn't manage people directly at that time. I managed people after going back and changing my trajectory and getting my MBA. So my management experience came after graduate school. But in that time, I would say the most formative experience I had when in banking, it was crazy. I worked on the integration with Countrywide, like while the whole economy was kind of doing crazy things. And so that was just really interesting to experience like a slice of history in real time with the people like making those decisions. So that was really interesting to understand like how integrations work and like how people get impacted by those decisions and like the extent of work that is involved. I don't think you can really like comprehend it fully even when it's explained to you from the outside until you're like doing it. So I thought that was a really cool opportunity, and that happened because I was working in the mortgage division in the first year. I then got opportunity to go work on that Countrywide Bank of America, which Countrywide was a mortgage lender at the time, integration at the time, and because of that role. So again, serendipity seems to be a theme in a lot of my career.
Mhm. I think this is fascinating to me because I'm hearing your experience of traveling, experiencing what work life balance is like, having this Peace Corps style role where like you said, it's a very eye opening
Mm-hmm.
experience to Bank of America. I
Yeah.
love the twists and turns. It's it's I would say it's definitely unique. And did any part of you ever question, like you even said, right? It's
Yeah.
those are very opposite kinds of experiences. Did
Yeah.
any part of you ever be like, what the heck is going on? Or did you ever falter in your career or be like, why am I here?
Oh gosh, yes. Like no pause at all in that. So I consider myself a corporate eclectic, and that
Ooh, I
so
like that.
Mm.
people may not know what to do with me because I have these two like seemingly opposed aspects of my personality. Like I'm a
Mhm.
Capricorn, I'm very driven and very career oriented, but I also believe in like whole self and balance outside and these other aspects of your identity and your attachment to a community. And so for me, it was really towards the end of my tenure at Bank of America where it's like, this just doesn't, it worked because that was the major I kind of like stumbled into. I didn't want to change my major when I was in school. I went toward what felt safe at the time. And then I kind of threw caution to the wind. I was like, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to experiment for 2 years in graduate school and try something else. What that something else is, I don't know. And it's very expensive to sign up for that risk. But I have faith that like I'll be able to experiment over this 2 year period and figure out by the end of it like what I want to do. So absolutely had that reckoning moment, and I am so grateful that I didn't do part-time school, because I think if I did part-time graduate school I would have just stayed the path. I would have stayed in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I never would have had like the experience I had in grad school, meeting all these amazing human beings from all walks of life, and then ultimately moving to Portland, having my life here, and meeting my husband. So
Mhm.
yes, but definitely had a low.
As we all do.
Mhm.
We interviewed someone yesterday who literally said the exact same thing about grad school. Like they were trying to figure it out, and she said, "Yeah, it was an expensive way to figure things out, but I did it." She literally had the same comment. That's so funny. At what point did you go to grad school during Bank of America? Was it meshed in the middle or before?
It was after. So
After, okay.
so around year 7, I decided I wanted to change careers, and wasn't interested in being in finance anymore. I wanted to try something other than Charlotte. Applied to school, and then I went back full time. Moved to Chapel Hill, so I went to UNC, and then the rest is history.
Saying, what did you get your master's in?
Yeah, so I went for an MBA, but the program that I was specifically interested in, it was a generalist program, which I'm definitely a generalist. I could pick and choose all sorts of classes once you got through your core curriculum. But the thing I loved about UNC was they had a huge sustainability bent. I don't know if they still do, but I was very keen on like doubling down on that and finding a way to make sustainability a part of my career. And there were so few MBA programs that had that to offer. And I think because of that, it attracted a really collaborative, at the time, it was like triple bottom minded group of people. And that was where I wanted to go, because I figured I would find people that weren't just interested in short term benefits to a company, but also thinking about like, how do we coexist with the planet that we're trying to preserve?
That sounds like a room that I would like to be in.
Right?
Because the reality is, right? This is just an internal struggle. You have to make money. You have to have a job. But ideally, what makes you money benefits other people along the way. And I think at some point you have to just look in the mirror and say, well, if we're going to make change, somebody has to do it. So I love that there was an emphasis on sustainability and that you were able to look into it. Also, too, having a general MBA, I think is so valuable because think about an undergrad, right? You have the opportunity to be like an open major until you decide what you want to do.
Right.
Grad school, I think should offer an extension of that because it's like you know that you enjoy school, you know that you have the drive and the interest, but sometimes there's this hesitation to get a graduate degree because you're like, oh, we're doubling down, like this is an investment, and if I
Yep.
was to ever not stick with this degree, it would feel like it was a waste, which I think is just a whole other conversation. But it sounds like you were able to. I love that you're using the word generalist. I'm going to take that from your vocab, but I love that you were able to take that into your schooling. So you're in Chapel Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like from there you were able to make the transition to Portland. Is that the next step in your journey?
There was an in-between step. So I started, so I've been in product management and marketing since moving on from my MBA. And I started as a buyer at Target. So I moved all the way up to Minnesota, somehow escaped both of the gigantic snowstorms the year before and after me. It was still cold though, can confirm. A little too cold for me. But yeah, so that's where I ended up. And I was there for about 2 years. I made it through 2 winters, and I was like, I love this job, but I cannot do these winters. So I moved to Portland, and then the Midwest found me because my husband is from Wisconsin. So like I left it, but it followed me to Portland.
No.
Hey, we're two Kansas City girls, and I guess I could kind of consider myself that as well. But
You
and
should.
our
Yeah.
husbands are from the Midwest, so we're
Always
very much
rooting.
in support of a good old Midwestern boy, as I like to call them. They're good. They're a great breed. So when you went back to Portland, what was your experience like in product marketing? We've had a couple of guests in there that we've had previously in that specific sector, but I'm curious what your experience was like and how your previous experience lent to your work in product marketing. There's my question.
Yeah. I followed. So what I would say is that the way that I look at product and product marketing was so influenced by that first role. at
Mm.
Target, that a lot of the things that I kind of notice in more what I would describe as like niche, either R&D oriented product roles in tech or product marketing, which is all go to market management. It's when you go into a retail product role, you do the entire marketing mix. So it's like promotion, placement, pricing, and the product development. And again, I'm a generalist, so like I like having my octopus tentacles and like all areas of the business and partnering with all of these cool people. So I think the hardest part, candidly, Ellen, was like how how do I like how do I step away from these other things that used to be part of my role? And that again was a transition to just understand like different sectors structure the role differently. And so when I went in, my first role actually in Portland was for a consumer packaged goods startup. They were interested in my retail experience because they were trying to sell into retailers, and that was primarily an R&D role with a little bit of product marketing um, effort to it, but that was primarily the brand manager. And I loved the brand stuff. So it was, I wanted to like have a seat at the table, even if it was like a folding chair. So I tried to squeeze my way in there to the greatest extent possible. But now from that experience, what I've learned is it's really helpful to have experience, even if you are more oriented towards one side of the house. You become a better product marketer if you've done product management and vice versa. And so I think it's good to do little tours to appreciate what your business partners might be concerned or thinking about so that you can be more influential with them. And then I also just know how to ask better questions when I'm looking at roles and considering applying to them to understand like what is product marketing, or if you call it product management, but it's product marketing in like a traditional sense. How do I screen for that so I find the role that plays to my strengths?
So, from what I hear, is get involved as many conversations as possible, be well rounded so that you can be well focused. Because I struggle with this so much, Brie, where it's like, you want to have one area of focus. You want to be an expert in something. But in order to be an expert in something, you have to have this like really high level overview of everything else, especially in the world of like product and marketing. It's not just like one thing, there's so many pieces involved.
Yes.
So, having that conversation with you right now was just very reassuring. Knowing that you were working at a startup, I love talking about startups. Talk about your experience, especially because were you the first, like, was your position net new? Did you have anyone, like a predecessor? What was that experience like? Did it turn out the way that you were expecting?
Great question. What it did not turn out the way I expected, but honestly, I don't know. It happened so fast that have you ever had a role where you're like, I'm not quite sure what my expectation is. I'm just
Ooh.
gonna go into it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have a ton heading into it. And then there wasn't a predecessor. They were creating this role in tandem with brand management role in preparation for the manager at the time who was about to go out on mat leave. And so it was a jump to go from retail into CPG in my first startup, not as just a mentor, but like actually taking that role on. And then within a couple of months, she went out on leave. We hadn't yet hired the brand manager. And so it was like drinking out of a fire hose for like 6 months, wearing both of the hats until we could onboard and just learning how startups work. Like, I have so much compassion for people that like gravitate towards that type of environment. But if it's your first startup and depending on how, you know, early stage the company is and how fast they want you to move, it can take some time adjusting to that pace. And then also just sitting with your own like how fast feels right for like my own pacing of where I do my best work. And it, to me, jumping into a startup almost forces you to understand like I may gravitate towards this environment, but is this the right, how do I find the right startup environment so that I can deliver the best results? So I think I had some some learnings from that first startup of what the right environment is for me. And it didn't necessarily go exactly as I planned, but I also learned am I allowed to curse on this show? A
Oh, swear
ton,
away.
a shit ton, as a result of that experience.
That's awesome. And I know Sarah loves talking about startups. We also talked about this in our recording earlier this week, but I love you noted about like being comfortable with the pace of work.
Mm-hmm.
Startups are fast paced, period. But
Yes.
how they operate is always going to be a different across the board, but then also how you respond to that is
Mm-hmm.
different across the board as well. And I mean, the ambiguity that comes along with it as well. Like, you've got to be ready for some whiplash, honestly,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and change daily. And we talk about this a lot as well, but like, it's such great experience. And it also, I think, helps with that process of elimination to determine the
Mm-hmm.
pace of work you like, and understanding all of the different various roles across a company and where you want to be and don't want to be as
Mm-hmm.
well. So, what led you out of the startup world? Did something come find you, or did you go find another role?
Ooh, I never really left the startup world. I just tried out different
I
startups.
love that.
A
So,
sampling, if you will.
Yeah.
yeah, a sampling, if you will.
A flight of startups.
Yeah.
Yes. So I worked in a cannabis biotech startup. That
Okay,
was
you and
real.
Sarah have the same life. This is really starting to get
Yeah, truly.
scary.
Yes. Also worked in the cannabis tech space. How
Okay.
wild.
Yeah. I loved that job. I met
Mhm.
some amazing human beings. It was wild how like the industry took off, and then when the pandemic hit, it was like, whoops, we're sorry, not happening, but I really enjoyed that, especially because there was, with the company I work for, like a sustainability play. So that was
Mhm.
fun to work on, from like a press and the origins of the industry, like balancing where the company was going versus like what the OG growers wanted from the company. So that was fascinating. I did work at Amazon for a year after that experience. And then I jumped to a company called Blue River, which was acquired by John Deere, but very, very much a startup. So they operated pretty much in conjunction with John Deere, but in terms of the pace, and they were like a prototyping company for a robotics platform. And so that moved super duper fast. It was wild how fast they like developed that technology, given how many engineers were involved. And then I built my own company, which I wouldn't necessarily, I guess you could consider that a startup, but it's like a startup of one. And then now I'm at Apartment List, which is 10 years old. I think it's a little bit like, it's a chiller vibe, is what I would say. They're very data driven, but they're kind of in the same vein as the biotech startup, the cannabis company, because people are very like data driven and analytical, and so the balance of like data and then ideas people, it's helpful for me to now realize like I need that type of company where like I can come in with like a lot of ideas and excitement, and that speaks to people that might be more like data driven, versus like all innovator personalities where I'm the one balancing out like the high energy, if that makes sense. But I think I wouldn't have come to that conclusion had I not had the flight that you mentioned.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Two things. I love how you just phrased that, because I think we've all worked at companies where there's a mismatch of
Mhm.
ideas people and like analytical people, because to me ideas people are like, it needs to be done right now. This idea will lose its charm if it's not completed right now. And the
Yeah.
analytical people are like, well, let's take a second to look at it and see its effectiveness, and if we're going to move forward with it. And I think you have to have this fair balance being a project manager, especially you sit in the middle of it a lot of times, and so you're kind of
Oh
like
yeah. I
doing
feel for
this.
you.
Like, do we listen to? So I love how
Yeah.
you phrase that. I think that's perfect and very visual for me. But second, you and Ellen and I had talked about this before we joined, but in your bio, you coined the term, oh my God, and now it's slipping me, portfolio,
Portfolio.
a
Yeah.
portfolio career.
Mhm.
Sorry, one second. Briggs also enjoys this. Briggs, hey, he
He has
doesn't
He's
stop
thoughts on
talking.
enthusiastic.
portfolio careers.
I know. Briggs.
I love the term. I when I saw it in your bio, I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about this.
Would love to. I'm so annoying in that I love to talk about this all the time to
Well,
my family,
you
friends, and
found
people I meet online. So,
perfect. You found the right girls to talk about this with. I think I've seen this term a little bit on TikTok as well in terms of like,
Mhm.
you know, people who have full-time jobs, side gigs, side hustles, and kind of just trying to create some sort of brand for themselves. And
Yeah.
while maybe during the process it may not seem cohesive, the end goal is cohesive and it makes
Yep.
sense. But tell me tell me what your interpretation is of it, what you like about it, and maybe some like fun things that you've noticed along the way.
Sure. So, my interpretation of it is that it's really, there are so many flavors of it. There's the portfolio careerist that is a lifelong generalist, meaning they like different types of roles, but one role at a time, where they're hired in to solve a problem. And they might not have any sort of additional business outside of that, but they thrive not in specializing, but like finding a new problem that they are super enamored of and just like chasing that down ruthlessly, and adding value in that way. And I think, what Millie Tamati, for example, is building is like a perfect example of like generalist groups, where people can kind of feel seen, like, oh, there's not this rush to specialize. So that's one
Mm.
flavor. And then you have the other end, which is like fractional work, where you have a zone of genius and you want to go full time on that, but kind of instead of focusing on a role full time within a company, you've got enough experience to be contracted for, say, like 20 to 30 hours a week for 1 to 2 companies for a longer duration of time. As a fractional, for example, chief marketing officer or chief finance officer. And so there's that flavor. And then there's I actually don't love the term side hustle because it, I think, limits the opportunity. Like if I had to put that on what I'm building with my own business in conjunction with my role as a marketing manager at Apartment List, it would feel like it's diminishing it and also
Mm.
shoving hustle on it. But I understand
Hmm.
people like that term and it's been around for a while. For me, I like the term portfolio career in that context too, to say there is a series of roles. Some I'm paid for, some I'm not. They're passion projects. And I'm experimenting my way through to bring these all together with some sort of narrative that, like the connective tissue that combines all of these things. And the thing I love about it is that the goal is growth. And especially depending on what an employer can provide, we all, generally speaking, want to grow our skill sets and step into new experiences. And for me, now, for the first time having a business of my own in conjunction with my job, I am able to like take full ownership of my growth and like find these opportunities to develop skills that may not be within the lines or bounds of the job that I've been hired for. And it's an outlet for my passion. I'm a passionate, sometimes spicy person. And so like I won't get so attached to a direction that may not be decided on by a company, because I have my own thing that I can have complete creative direction and influence over. And so to me, it's the opportunities are limitless and there's not just one form of portfolio career. So I hope more people find out about this style of career and look into it for themselves to figure out what flavor that I've mentioned resonates most with them.
I
Oh,
love this.
me too. I'm like foaming at the mouth over here. I absolutely love that.
I think it answers a lot of concerns that people have
Mm.
because you go to college, You're told that you're supposed to do one job, maybe switch companies, maybe, but nowadays, like, that just does not fit what people want, what people desire. And that is growth, that is experience, that's challenges, that's change, that's newness. And again, it's not for everyone, and you can kind of pick your flavor, and that flavor could change monthly, weekly, daily, whatever energy, is serving you best. But I resonate with this so much that I'm just like, portfolio career. I wish that I could just say, when somebody's like, what do you do? What do you do? I'm like, I'm a portfolio career specialist. Like, because it shouldn't be just one thing. And, kind of back to that whole hiring manager position, you carry so much knowledge by dabbling in all of these different areas that, you don't necessarily get with just having one full-time job at one company. I'm curious, Ellen and I were actually just talking about this because we were talking about, like, on your LinkedIn or on your resume. Brie, how would you, tell somebody or advise somebody that does have a portfolio career how to best present that, especially when it comes to a resume, right? Where sometimes it's difficult to portray, like, I wasn't just a job hopper necessarily. I was doing all of these short-term contracts, but maybe they don't have a business entity that they're, working under. Like, how would you tell or advise somebody to best express that?
I want to start by saying we did not plan for this question to just naturally present itself. You didn't tell me this question was coming. But Sarah, as luck would have it, I noticed this pattern of people getting stuck. So I worked with, I think it's now 42 clients since I got my start with Build with Brie, including some branding workshops. And as I mentioned, I liked the idea of being an investigative journalist when I was a kid. So bringing it back full circle, I love helping people figure out how to connect all of these things. And so I work individually with people in pulling that out of them, like finding the language, mirroring it back to them with a handful of prompts. And I'm working on a offering for the beginning of the year that will make that much more accessible for people that may not be able to support with, like, life and student loans and all of that, to make that a more accessible entry price point because of the experience of the framework that I use in my one-to-one coaching and in these company workshops that I've run over the course of the last couple of months to help people do exactly what you're talking about. So again, that could have not, like, teed that up any more naturally. We didn't plan for it, but, like, you're spot on with, like, what a lot of people struggle with. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I knew that we were on the same brain wavelength this pretty much entire episode. So we will absolutely include where you can find Brie and services, because that's the case. Like, Ellen and I were like, do we put our, fitness instructor experience on our LinkedIn? Like, will somebody look at that and be like, oh, that, who cares? But no, you should care, because that experience is valuable and shapes who you are as an employee for future opportunities.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a TikTok that one of my clients, again, I'm like annoying about talking about portfolio careers all the time, but he saw it and he was like, oh my God, Brie, send this to every client that has a question about how to tie things together. And it'll reinforce what you just said. Like, you should absolutely bring all of the parts that tell the story of Sarah to the forefront.
Okay, couple of things. First of all, 42 clients and a new offering coming in January. Snaps for you. Congratulations. It's really exciting. And two, I think why I like the term portfolio career so much is because it literally just gives a name to all of the randomness that it feels like I am doing right now. Like, selfishly, it seems random, but I love that you said that the end goal is growth, because I could not relate to that more. And as you were talking about having your full-time job and then your company on the side, and have that is your passion project, your creative outlet, your area to flex those muscles that you're not able to accommodate during the workday. I'm like, you're taking things out of my brain and saying them, because, as you know, there are limitations in a full-time job, especially in a very structured corporate. I'm in a contract role, so it's very structured and
Mm-hmm.
transactional, which I like elements of, absolutely. But being able to have those other areas outside of work where I can be more creative. We're pitching people and we're in like more of a sales role sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing the creative marketing aspects, etc. I could go on and on. And so I think I like that so much again because it puts a name
Yeah.
and a term to what we're talking about. So I want to hear a little bit more about the birth of your company and how
Mm.
the idea came to be and kind of what launch was like for you.
Sure. So let's go back in time to December of 2023. I was part of the cohort of tech employees that lost their job. And
Me too.
welcome to the
Me too.
curb.
Yep.
So I took a couple months off to just chill and process that loss that was expected and unexpected, in that like eventually parts of the company were going to be absorbed. It just, the timing of it with everybody else also losing their job wasn't like obviously great. But I was ready to move on because it was starting to feel more like a big bureaucratic company. So it was unexpected and not my choice, which was what I was a little salty about. And I needed time to just like move through that. And then what I noticed after taking like 3 months to myself and just like doing things not related to work and recharging my batteries, reading, doing yoga, I realized I had a need to help people. Which, like, I help people in my friend circle and things like that, but I managed a team in my full-time role, and I've been managing people for close to a decade, and that absence um, kind of led me to coaching. And so I thought, well, I might give this a shot. And so I took a couple coaching classes, and then I started, I felt like career transitions was a natural place to start because I was feeling that very much in real time. But also, people were in need of those services with the number of people that were in between roles or wanting to switch. And then I noticed this portfolio career pattern in people where they like either had an idea, they wanted to switch to a job that would accommodate them having the style of multiple things at once type of career. And I was like, then I stumbled into the portfolio career term and I was like, this is it. I can't stop thinking about this term. I want to help people. I don't want to just transact and get people to the next job. I want to help people leverage my business background and also my natural desire to help people in thinking about like more substantial lasting change. And so that's kind of how I stumbled into what I'm working on as my passion project.
Ooh, and all in less than a year. Holy cow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Brie,
March it'll be a year.
yeah,
Woo!
be so proud of yourself. I love that you noticed the gap of I once managed and mentored people. There's a part of me that is missing by not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another, I think, sometimes stopgap in people's career where they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, do I want to take the execution route and grow in my skill, or do I want to take the people route and grow in my management? And sometimes maybe it's not necessarily management of the people within the company, but there's
Yeah.
outlets and avenues such as coaching where you can still take that nurture, help,
Yep.
and feeling and need that you have. And I love that. I can't even imagine. I mean, Ellen and I get to talk weekly with people, right? And hear their
Uh-huh.
stories. But to be able to coach people through that, like, I feel like that's such an honor. And I hope
It
you're
really
able to walk
is.
away. Yeah, just knowing that you're helping these people and you're bringing benefit to their life in some capacity. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine what that feels like. But
Yeah.
we will absolutely include, because I'm assuming people that listen to the podcast are probably going through thoughts, emotions, feelings of career transitions if they haven't already in the past. So we will absolutely include where to find Brie. But Brie, I'm going to ask you the big
Mm-hmm.
question. How
Sure.
do you define success for yourself?
Ooh. Success to me is getting to the end of your life and feeling like you've lived your life, your one wild and precious life. I forget who said that. Um, in a way that just like as you're reflecting on it again in your like last couple of minutes with those loved ones around you, and you just feel like you, what is it, soaked life up to the last drop. And so that could be many things, but to me it's like it's not about having titles or necessarily even certain life experiences, because again, you had mentioned, Sarah, like maybe you didn't opt into a certain experience like studying abroad, but like you still, my guess, like lived a really good life and you were present with in the moments that mattered. To me, that is success. It's not a series of accolades.
Ooh, I love what a beautiful picture you just painted too. That was very
Very
picturesque in my
visual.
mind. Yes. We'll jump into some rapid fire questions. So,
Okay.
Brie, what is one thing you cannot let you? Oh my God, I
Sorry.
have now been cursed. Sarah, okay, Jesus. All right.
Brie, I
What
usually
is
mess this question up and I have to volley it to Ellen, and now she's messing up. But
now
that's
I'm
okay.
cursed. It's also like worded strangely, and then like I try to
Yeah,
picture
we
it in my
didn't.
mind, and obviously it doesn't help. But what is one thing you cannot live without to make it through the workday?
Ooh. So we just, well, we're not just adopted them, but a year ago we adopted two tuxedo cats, that are the loves of our
Cute.
life. We lost our previous two kitties like 6 months prior to that. So I enjoy, because I work from home, as does my husband, going upstairs. And when I just need like a time to reset and ground myself, like snuggling with my cats.
Mm, I love that. That's like one of the first answers that's not coffee. You're like touching my pet.
Yeah. Yes. Bonding
Okay, well,
time.
you teed me up for my next question. What's your favorite way to unwind after work?
Ooh, a workout right now. It changes because I like to change up my workouts, but I'm doing a lot of like hot yoga.
Oh,
So I
love
enjoy that. Yeah.
that. I like to change mine up too, and I'm currently in my hot yoga phase, so I love that. What is one of the best benefits or perks that you've ever had from a job?
Hmm. I would say flex time off, and like real flex time off. Because, sometimes companies have that, but you have to like run it through.
Yeah.
Like being treated like an adult and knowing like as long as you're getting your work done, take the time that you need to recharge so that you can show up fully to your job.
Seems simple in nature, but somehow one of the most complicated territories. Okay,
Yeah.
and last question for you: in person, remote, or hybrid?
I struggle with this one because I think remote has opened up a whole new community. Like I've met the two of you through creating community outside of work, but I
Mm-hmm.
also, my past job and then this current one, they bring people together periodically. So I guess I would have to say hybrid. I love sitting down with another human, not entirely interacting with them in pixelated form.
Something about it. You can reach out and touch them. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Brie, thank you so much for your time. I
Yes,
feel
thank
like we
you.
need to have maybe another session specifically around portfolio careers and just gab away. So maybe that will be in our future. We will make
Love that.
sure to I would let's get it on the calendar. Honestly, I'm ready to talk about it right now. We'll make sure to include all the places that you can find Brie and Built by Brie. Again, thank you so much for being here. We absolutely loved having
Thank you for
you.
having me. Great to meet
Thank
you too.
you.
Stay in touch.
I'm 100%. We're connected on LinkedIn now, so you can't get rid of us.
Okay, great.
Thanks everybody for listening. And remember, it's literally just a job.